Well, Matt, thank you so much for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Matt Graham. I'm a cybersecurity systems engineer. I live in Church, Texas. It's just outside of San Antonio in Military City, USA. I'm also an Army veteran, 4 years. Not sure, not sure what else is relevant. I'm a self-proclaimed, space geek. I like pulling my telescope out and doing some planetary, just kind of gazing and looking. I don't do a whole lot of astrophotography. I kind of just like to see Jupiter's moons and Saturn's rings, and look at our moon. That's always a great thing to see. But
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, just kind of guessing, I bet you were probably about the same age. And I remember distinctly thinking in high school that I love space and I love computers. And then like the internet just like took off and like anybody could get a job in like computers and IT and internet. And then it's just like, that's where the career went.
yeah, so I'm 44. I don't know if that's about the same.
Exactly. I'm
Yeah,
45, about to turn 46. So
yeah. So I was the same way. So I we're on that generation where we grew up most of our life with no pretty much an analog, adolescent life, and then transitioned into digital I think I got my first computer that went online when in 1996 when I was, 19 years old or 19 years old. And I joined the Army shortly after. And I told my recruiter that I wanted to go into IT, and he promptly put me into a data entry job, which wasn't fun. But I got out after 4 years and went to school and got me an associate's degree from ITT, which no longer exists anymore, but it gave me a good baseline knowledge of all of the IT things I would need to know to get an entry level job. And I did some work in a local municipality here in South Texas as a system administrator, and then I worked in hospital system for a little while as a help desk tech. And then I'm currently working for a managed service provider called Rackspace Technology, where I work as a cybersecurity engineer. But I'm leaving my options open, because I'd sure like to advance my career a little more and kind of get out of the managed service provider industry and more into maybe a private company and kind of focus more on something. I want to get into the aerospace industry. I'm not that, I left Florida last month, and I was like, man, I really, really, really want to get closer to this industry. I still want to do IT and cybersecurity and all that stuff, but I wanted to do it in an aerospace company, and SpaceX doesn't do remote jobs, and that's a real bummer because, I don't want to go move to McGregor. It's just not my thing, and I certainly don't want to move to Brownsville because it's just way too hot. But
and humid is right there by, and you get the flooding and the hurricanes.
oh yeah, so God willing, I'll find me a role somewhere that fits my needs and will kind of fill that bucket, of wanting to be a little closer to aerospace and space industry. So that's my current aspirations right now.
That
Since
is,
I obviously didn't become an astronaut, right?
I did not. I did not win the generosity seat on the Inspiration 4 either. So
Yeah, I actually entered in the prosperity seat because I also have a side business that I do. I make things with paracord. So primarily, my biggest product is ID lanyards, because I work in a corporate environment. And before the pandemic, I was in the office, and everybody had a name badge. They had a badge. They had a badge into. It was a big hit. It still is a big hit. So it's not enough of money to quit my day job, but it buys me coffee and lunch and some other things. And I've got a couple of big customers that hit me, once or twice a quarter with some relatively large orders, and that's nice. But that's the platform that I used is in my prosperity video was that small business.
did you go to the VIP event they had for the prosperity participants?
I did. My wife and I did go down and spent the evening at Fish Lips that night and watched the launch from there. And prior to going to the venue, we were at Kennedy Space Center just touring the area that day, but we didn't splurge for the tickets at the Saturn V Center. We took what they gave us and went back to the hotel and relaxed a little bit, and then went and had a few dinner and a couple of drinks, on SpaceX at their event. Had a really good time. And we took the opportunity while we were in Florida to go to Disney as well for a few days, before and after the launch date. But because how can you go to Florida and not take that opportunity to go do that? So that was a lot of fun as well.
Well, one way that happens is Tuesday, the day before the launch, you're like, I should really go. And you buy a ticket for a couple of hours after that, and you're on a plane.
Yeah,
So that's what I did.
yeah. Oh, so you're a real whirlwind, last minute decision to go, huh?
And the thing that really pushed me over was I had a friend that did. I had several friends that did the prosperity thing, and they were like encouraging me to go. The thing that pushed me over the edge is I actually had a coworker die the previous weekend.
Oh
I
goodness.
just found out about it like that Tuesday morning, and I was having kind of like YOLO feelings. For some reason, um, I find death sad, for sure. But then the other side of it is that I think of, what are the things that he would have wanted to do that he didn't get to do, and well, he can't do them.
Yeah,
So it's like even more of a, I mean, it's like it almost feels like you have to live your life even fuller than you would have, type of
yeah.
thing.
What can you do to honor that person? Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, or at the very least, learn the lessons of it.
Yeah.
The fact that life is short and you don't know.
Shortly when we left for Florida, my wife's sister was in the hospital battling COVID,
Hmm.
and actually, she did actually pass away right before we left for Florida, which was
Okay.
really unfortunate. And we went to New Orleans this past weekend to actually put her to rest. So it kind of, I get what you're saying. That was probably one of the closest deaths to me in my 44 years. I've been fortunate enough to not have people that close to me, pass away, and it really makes you think about things. It really brings things into a much bigger perspective, and yeah. So
I just and yeah, for sure. Um, well, we probably just missed each other. I didn't participate in the prosperity thing, but like the friends I told you, they're like, hey, you should come over after lunch. So they kind of they kind of stuck me in.
yeah,
So,
we had a really good time. I really enjoyed the whole week out there. I wish that I could have stayed for the splashdown. Of course, I didn't have an invite for the that awesome splashdown event that they had, but that's okay.
um, I guess so. The inspiration for thing. I mean, obviously, you would go to space if you could. Um, I I mean, in the context of humanity branching out into the rest of the solar system, us becoming spacefaring, us generating support for like Artemis and further space exploration, how how do you think inspiration for either like supports that or detracts from it? I mean, what are your views? Does it bring us closer to being spacefaring?
Absolutely. I think it's huge. I think it's a lot bigger than people realize it is. The meaning of it and what it actually had done for human space flight. I think that it proved that you don't have to be a physicist or a 20-year military, veteran or a doctor or what have you, that all of these amazing people that have gone to space that have all of these great credentials, it proved that you don't have to have those credentials to be functional up there and to do things fun, I liked how much they just had fun while they were doing real things. I liked every time, a video would pop up and they would be talking and there's Haley hanging upside down. I just thought that was hilarious. They were, or you'd see her, just spinning away, just enjoying the moment and just being in there. And I think that the fact that they've proven that regular people can go and do these things. And I think that companies like Axiom Space and all these other these, there's going to be more to come because they're going to realize, oh, we can hire these astronauts and it's not going to cost us what it would cost if we hired, Bob or Doug to come and fly our capsule. These people, they're not going to require the same type of, compensation, because they don't have a 10-year, master's degree in, quantum physics or whatever it is you need to go do all these amazing things. And I think it's just going to open up the doors for a lot more things. And I think that we went down in May. My wife asked what we wanted to do for my birthday, and I was like, you know what, I want to go to Boca Chica and I want to go see this thing with my own eyes. And it's a 4-hour drive from here, maybe a little bit longer. So we probably should have stayed the night, but we drove down there just for the day and then went and had lunch on South Padre and all that. And I think once that starts flying and they have the opportunity to put hundreds of people at a time up there, I think that that's really going to open the doors for a lot wider of a range of the caliber of people that can go. I haven't given up hope because I think that there's going to be a lot more opportunity, a lot more.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I think a lot of it does hinge on Starship, being 100% reusable.
Yeah,
And I mean, uh, Elon was talking about being able to use the same Starship 3 times a day,
yeah,
um, and was talking about having a factory in Boca Chica that would produce 2 per week. And each one could lift 100 tons to orbit. You start doing the math on that, and there's this space investor person, Megan Crawford. Her company keeps track of like all these space startups, and one category they have is like launch companies. There's
mhm,
like 163 launch startups at various, things that are just like fortune cookie level of maturity to things like SpaceX, who's like owns 60% of the market globally or something like that,
yeah,
and everything in between. And she's like, guys, stop making launch companies and start making companies that make things to launch.
yeah.
you know, it's like now we need to, Bigelow Aerospace, I think it was like 10 years too early or something like that.
And companies that are going to build infrastructure up there, that's going to be the next big need. Is the space station is great, but it's dated, and it's not really functional for a lot for future state things. And I think that one of the other things with Starship and civilians is there's going to be a need for people to build those things, and they're not going to need to have master's degrees in engineering and things like that to do that kind of a work. And the Inspiration 4 crew proved that those people, those like Chris Simbrowski is a perfect example. He's an IT guy. He's a data engineer. He's I don't know if you get what I'm saying there. There's
Absolutely. I mean, I feel
far
like
more opportunities that are opening up. Yeah.
he could be like you or me. I'm working
Yes.
customer support for a software company, and you're into IT security, and he's into IT. I mean, I feel like we would all be like, if we were in the same company, we'd definitely be in the same part of the org to
I feel
some
like if
degree.
I had gotten the prosperity seat, I would have been the Sombrowski on that flight. I think that would have been my role. I That said, though, I connected more with Jared just in his experiences across his life and the things that he was doing. I mean, a lot of real similarities, like his trip to the Air Force Academy, and he was, flying with them in their gliders. Well, my dad was in the Air Force and was stationed at the Air Force Academy for years, so I connected with him on that point because I was used to seeing those gliders flying around the Air Force Academy, and then just his humor and some of the other things that piqued his interest. I guess one of the other ones was taking dry hops to space to make space beer. That's so cool. I mean, did he think of that? Because that's something I probably could have thought about. You know, so I connected more with Jared, while I think that I align more as a professional with Chris.
Now, did you watch the Netflix documentary Countdown?
I did. I did.
Now, I watched the first episode. I mean, I've watched all 4 episodes. I gotta watch the fifth one. That's coming up.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to pace myself, otherwise it's just like, you like finish the candy bar, you're like, oh, now what am I gonna eat? But um, Jared was talking about how he was on a call with SpaceX, and presumably a Shift 4 payments call, talking about something completely unrelated. And in closing, he says, "Hey, whenever y'all get ready to start launching regular everyday people, let me know." And they say, "Oh, we're actually a lot closer than you might think." And then that precipitated
Yeah.
the whole Inspiration 4 thing. Now, the part that confuses me is what's SpaceX doing talking to a payment processing company? I mean, like, how's especially considering PayPal and that type of thing. So I just kind of curious about
It
that.
would be interesting. Yeah. I hadn't really thought about that. Of course, I didn't know that those talks were happening before. I mean, I'd have to go back and rewatch it. I must have missed that portion of episode one. But
Yeah, it's like it's very brief.
hmm,
It's like trying to talk about how it's just a flippant conversation, but not really revealing what the main conversation is about. Just kind of curious. I just anyway, but
yeah, that'd be interesting to know that. But yeah.
um, well, uh, when did you find out that NASA was planning to send astronauts to the moon in 2024 for the first time since 1972?
So there was a program that died during the Obama administration. I forget what it was called, but they were developing habitats that were going to be used for permanent, station on the moon. And so I'd have to look and see. I forget what the program was called. It wasn't Artemis because it was well before that. But um, that's when I've realized, oh, we're really going to go back, and I got real excited about that because I'd always wondered why we never went back. You know, why after the last Apollo missions did we just stop? We put all the money into the shuttle and just did a lot of science, which is great, but never made it past lower orbit. And I was always wondering why. And now that it's apparent that that's actually going to happen, it's super exciting to see. And I think it's important. I don't think that we can go to Mars until we go back to the moon, because I think that there's going to be a need for infrastructure there that's going to help us to get to Mars.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned the space shuttle, and we were just talking about Inspiration 4. One thing is, Inspiration 4 actually flew higher than any space shuttle ever flew.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
It's like, whoa.
They had a whole bunch of firsts.
Yeah, exactly. First prosthetic um, recipient,
Yeah,
um, kind of like the first free flyer crewed SpaceX mission, first all private mission, like lots of first. First time to
wow.
have 14 people in space.
Yeah.
Is
I
there
did.
what are some firsts that you think about?
So with the cupola was one that was the biggest window ever flown. That was really neat to think about that. You pretty much named all of the big hitters on the first ones there, but I think a lot of the things that they did up there were firsts. And the thing that was interesting about that is a lot of the things that they brought and the things that they did to connect with the public. I think that was real neat. That you know they brought the content home to everybody in a way that has never been done before. Because you get broadcasts from ISS and you get live broadcasts of launches and all that, but we never had as much content of, on orbit content until Inspiration 4. It was just wasn't there. You'd get, maybe once in a, I think Bob and Doug maybe got on video once and twice, once or twice through their whole thing before they got to ISS. But to see all of the different footage and pictures and things that they were doing up there in such a short period of time, it was interesting to me because we had, when the campaign first kicked off in January, February, we had a bunch of content right up front. You know, always something new to look at. Somebody's prosperity video, or Jared was posting something about what he was doing, and then it fizzled away, and we heard nothing until crew announcement, like weeks later, and then it ramped up really, really fast again for that, and then it went dead again for a good long while until they had little pockets of training, and then just a few weeks before the launch, it was like nonstop. And then the days leading up to it and after launch, I couldn't keep up with how much content there was coming in. Not just from SpaceX and from Inspiration 4, but from all the contributors and everybody that had been following it. All kinds of just really inspirational stuff. I think they really achieved what they set out to do, not just with St. Jude. That's just amazing, how much they raised there, but how they brought so many people, with them, because they did. We all went with them. We didn't go to space, but we were all there. It was a real neat experience. It was definitely a changer for me.
Yeah, and I mean, the more I learn about all four of them, the more I'm really impressed by them. I mean, Jared, I mean, he seems like the nicest billionaire ever. I just, just like, whoa. And then, Haley and Cyan, I mean, the kind of like your connection to Guam and Neil Armstrong, I really
Yeah,
like that. That's really cool.
yeah, it was.
Um, well, would it surprise you that, I was trying to interview people at Starbucks and on the streets and at the airports, and um, that still accounts for a significant number of my interviews. But so of the non-space people, I mean, would you believe that 80% of them don't know that we're planning to send people to the moon in 2024?
If you'd asked me that, you know, last year, I'd be like, no, I probably would have been surprised. But now I'm like, it is a really small group. It's the space community. It's in relative to everything else. That group on the Twitter feeds, it's all the same people. You've got all the astronauts, because there's all the astronauts on Twitter, and then you got all you know the influencers, and then all the regular people. But it's not really, it's not millions of people. It's a really small community, and so I'm not surprised that people just don't know, because they're not aware, and we all live in our bubbles, and if we're not looking out, or we're not talking to people in other bubbles, it's be easy to miss things. Be very easy to miss things.
Well, I guess, in a society where, you have elected officials looking for votes and trying to decide what to fund. Um, I mean, the fact that so few people know about it and are excited about it, doesn't that kind of put like Artemis and a return to the moon at risk?
I mean, probably not. I mean, because there's definitely some interest, and I think that there's probably enough individuals of of all different calibers and backgrounds to still have enough people to participate and support and do all the things that it needs to do. And I think all of the exposure that Inspiration 4 got in the mainstream, I hope that they're able to somehow keep that fire burning, because that's what's gonna be needed to drive up more support for the bigger missions.
Yeah, I hope so too. Now, about going to the moon, I have most of the people I talk to are either excited about it, the space people, are they really don't care either way, but you're talking to a pro space person, so they'll, yeah, good. But
Yeah.
if somebody came up and said, "Hey, we should be spending all this money on this," they'd be like, "Yeah, sure." So like at the soft center, I guess you call
I,
it.
I I really don't like that argument. We should be spending that here. I mean, we can do both. There's enough resources to do both.
Well, and even to go to space, you end up spending it here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, look at the jobs that they've created in places like Boca Chica and Cape Canaveral and all those things. Think of there's a lot of human involvement from people that aren't going to go to space. You know, welders, welding rings on starships and super heavy boosters. Those guys aren't plotting to go to space on that rocket, but they're down there living, they're supporting their families, their communities, and all those things right down there supporting that program. And that's only going to get bigger, especially if Starship does what Elon's saying he wants to do with the point to point travel on the globe, being able to fly to London in an hour. That's crazy. Hey, you want to go to Paris for lunch? You want to go Italy for lunch and come home?
I
I mean,
know it'd be crazy. Like at the end of your day, you fly to Tokyo, and then at the end of your day there, you fly back, and you're here before anybody woke up.
yeah, yeah, it's mind blowing. And you're talking to somebody that's still fascinated about driving around in Florida in the morning and then flying home and driving around in Texas in the evening on the same day. Or if we went on a driving tour in New England a few years back with me and my wife did and had coffee, breakfast, lunch, and dinner in 4 separate states.
Wow,
Well, you can do that in New England. You can't do that in Texas.
that's true. Unless you're on the edge, maybe
Fair enough. But I think
good.
that I had put together a little infographic where all of the New England states fit in Texas. As a matter of fact, Rhode Island is smaller than the county that I live in. So
Oh, and I understand that Rhode Island has what, 20 or 30 counties? Like to do anything in Rhode Island is like requires coordination across all these entities that are move at their own speeds.
it's crazy that a place that small can have so many different municipalities. I don't- How does that seems highly unmanageable, but you know it works for them. I was real disappointed in Rhode Island, not because it wasn't nothing bad, but I really wanted it to feel like a different planet when I went there because everything I'd read was that people in Rhode Island are different and everything's different and I really wanted to feel like I was on a different planet and I didn't get it there. So that's just something I laugh about. It wasn't weird enough for me.
Well, I think New Zealand is a good place to go. Because apparently every type of geography is represented in
Oh wow.
uh, in New Zealand to some degree. They have, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely like to travel. New Zealand's never it's not on my top 5 list, but I mean I would definitely like to go for sure.
Everybody's top five list may change a lot whenever you don't have to spend 24 hours traveling.
Right. Well, I have to see what the cost of that flight is though. I mean, right, it still costs, a few $1,000s to go on a zero G flight here.
Yeah, and I actually have been on one.
Have you?
Yeah, it was about 3 or 4 years ago. Spent 30 seconds of the time I got to be an astronaut. It's crazy. Well, I had one last question for you, and that was, I'm kind of see this as a documentary for people of the future to kind of look back and try to understand this time right before we take those next steps on the moon,
Yeah.
which hopefully leads to humanity branching out into the rest of the solar system. Oh, what are the types of questions and conversations that I should be having, or how can I improve this to kind of offer more value to those people looking back?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think like we've had done here, this just the conversation, just to kind of get a real personal feel of somebody. I think that's important. I think that means a lot because everybody's personal experience.
Something happened to the audio.
Did we lose audio?
Oh, you did for a little bit. You got everybody's personal experience, and then
They're all, everybody's are different, and everybody's views on things are different. But I think that if you take a good cross section of everybody, you'll start to see some themes that while they all seem very different, you'll see that when you boil it down, they're all going to be very similar, but just the motivations behind them are going to be different. What's motivating me to do this thing, which is the same thing this other person wants to do, but what's motivating them to do that? Does that make sense? Everybody's coming from a different place, but they, you know, tend to end up in the same place.
no, absolutely, that does make sense. And um, I guess also, did you have any questions or for me or anything you wanted to add?
Can you tell me a little bit about your project? I only have just a few more minutes, but I'd sure like to know what your end game is, what your goal is, what you're striving for.
Yeah. Well, I hope you're not disappointed to find out I don't have an end game.
That's Hey, you know what? Neither do I.
So you mentioned that you had been working from home for the past 18 months. When I started this project in December 2019, I had been working from home for the previous 2 years. And I realized that I wasn't getting out of the house to see other people in person. And at that time, Doug Laverio was appointed to NASA to get us to the moon by 2024. And he had like a lapel pin where he was counting down the days to the end of 2024 and going around NASA and highlighting people who were contributing as being that person of the day for NASA towards Artemis. And I was like, hey, I should do that for regular people and get out and talk to people. And then the COVID, lockdowns happened, so that's kind of funny. But yeah, so really, it's like kind of more of a personal improvement project than anything else.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah, the prosperity video was a big step outside of my comfort zone. So I appreciate what you're doing here, reaching out to people and just kind of having conversations with people that you don't wouldn't normally have a conversation with. That's inspiring to me in its own because I've got a hard time, putting myself out there like that.
Yeah, it's really difficult to go up to people out on the street. There's like social bubbles around people, and they're kind of impenetrable. But it kind of pushes you to see that. But anyway, I really appreciate your time, Matt, and I hope we can stay connected online.
Please, definitely. I like the community and I'd like to stay connected for sure.
Okay, have a good rest of your evening then.
Likewise, have a good one.
Bye bye.
Bye.